Q, what's good?
What's going on?
Well, super thrilled to be able to chop it up with you. Q, what's good?
What's going on?
Well, super thrilled to be able to chop it up with you. Super grateful also for your work with us on the Variation series.
As am I. I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. So you are Q, aka Media Pimp.
Yes.
And we are definitely going to talk about that name because I need to hear the story about it.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, to introduce you to everyone, you are a multi-hyphenate. So you're an artist, you're a producer, digital artist, designer, sound engineer. Am I missing anything?
Avid video gamer, headphone collector, just all around music lover. Father, husband, dog owner, lover.
When it comes to all the different hats you wear, really, especially on the music scene, how did you get to that point? Did you always have it in your mind to do everything? Was it like an evolution? Did it come from necessity?
Yes. So I got my start in the hip hop space. I would say really in middle school, but I didn't get serious until high school. So 90 something, I don't know, 93, 94-ish. And then, I was recording on, at home, I was recording into a 4-track tape. So
Yeah.
there wasn't really much that I could do with that. But that was when I first got into really appreciating the creative part of making music. Rather than just writing, I got into actually producing as well. Back then using an ASR 10. The first beat I made, I actually spun the records by hand to keep them on to keep them on beat. So I sampled a song, looped it, and then spun the drum break by hand to keep it on beat. And yeah, just that whole process amazed me, and I never really looked back from there.
That seems like it was the beginning of you wearing a bunch of different hats.
Yeah, yeah,
You kind of had to get it done because of your
yeah.
creative drive, sounds like.
Yeah, I have this. Basically, I feel like I just need to understand things and know how things work. So I mean, my mother used to talk about when I was a baby, I would take part like electronics and then put them back together. But I would study them, and I would put them back together and they would work again. Except the one telephone, the light never worked again. But outside of that, I've always had this drive to learn and understand and really just play around with things. And music gave me that outlet at a pretty early age. So one thing leads to another. If someone drops the ball on one aspect, then I'll pick up. I'll pick it up. So it's just the way that I work.
Yeah. And now you owe your mom's a phone.
Well, I've given her more than that over the years. She's good.
One thing that really strikes me is that you spent a long time away from music, something like 20-ish years.
Yeah, about 22 years, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Why the break?
So I had some experiences with the music industry that kind of soured me to it. And but during that same period, I had also got into graphic and web design. One thing led to another. I started a graphic design business and a web design business, and that just kind of blew up. And then eventually I had hired people and fired people and lost the business and lost a ton of money and kept that going. And then 20 years later, here I am, and some things happened. Lost that business and pretty much everything else, and fell into a deep depression. So the music was always there, but I became a fan rather than actually being a part of it. I still had my 88 keys, but I didn't really deal with them too much. I made a beat every now and again, but it was just for fun. But after losing my last business in 2021, something in that broke me, and that's what brought me back to music.
That's fascinating. That is a roller coaster ride of a journey.
Yeah.
How did the transition back into the music sphere help where you were at that time?
So a friend of mine Dragon's Pitchfork, who's one of the founding members of the Gryskll crew that I'm a part of. We're a bunch of older people who got back into making music for one reason or another, but also largely based around where we really connect is around mental health. And so when he reached out to me, it was pretty early on from my recovery. I had a stroke, a mild stroke, and a nervous breakdown, like lost my mind, like absolutely lost my mind. And I was, suicidal, like the whole nine. But he reached out to me. He saw something that I had said on Twitter, I think it was. But he saw something and he reached out to me. And so we had our first conversation. And I had no intentions of ever coming back to music. Like we had a conversation. I knew what he was doing. And I agreed to have a conversation with him. And I met with him and a few other members of the crew. And then I finally decided to share some of my old beats and some of my old music. And there was some excitement there, and I still had no intentions of coming back to the music. They invited me to become a member of the Gryskll crew, and I said yes, but my intention was to come back and do web design for them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
One day I shared an old rhyme that I had written in 96 maybe, but I refreshed it for now. And I shared it with them, and next thing I knew, I had two other people say they wanted to submit verses to make this a song. And I got one. I was like, oh, this is pretty good.
Okay, yeah.
And I got another one. And then I ended up making a beat for it, based on the conversation that we had. Like it just kind of all fell together. And that became my first single that I had put out since maybe 2000 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it did pretty well. For me, it was amazing that anybody was paying attention at all. I'm an old man, in hip hop, which is a young man's game or whatever they say, which I think is baloney, but that kind of started that drive. But it was also the first song that I engineered. And they were working with a few other engineers at the time. And when they heard what I did as my first actual engineering project, they were like, he's going to be doing this from now on. Wow. And I was happy because I found out that I actually loved that process. Like that's actually my favorite thing about music making at this point. I get excited about the engineering. Don't know why, but shaping sound is really my passion.
I can see a sort of a parallel between that and then working on code or things like that. It's the back end, and you're working on something that's going to shine on the front end.
Exactly.
So the work you put in, now that's gonna.
I get to help shape people's perception of what the art is that we're creating. So, and that was one of the things that I really liked. Like I started off as a freehand illustrator, like I said, and then I went into graphic and web design, and then I got known as a developer. I got known for my code. The way that I would create code was my way of telling a story. It's the same way, like if you listen to my music, I'm always telling some kind of story. Even if it sounds like I'm just saying words, if you pay attention, you'll actually start to see the picture that I'm painting.
I mean, obviously, that's a dope shirt you got. That's telling a story, Yeah,
this is a collaboration between my wife and I. These are actually her words, and I just put them on the shirt just because it's one of those things that grab your attention first, and it's a conversation starter. So
that whole ethos that you're talking about.
Yeah.
You say you like to tell a story. What's your favorite type of story to tell musically?
I tend to speak on what I see going on around me. Not so much anymore, but I've always been really into politics and just kind of social engineering, like the way that things like social media affect how people communicate with each other. So I tend to lean into a lot of that stuff, politics and history, primarily American history. I've always been extremely addicted to reading and learning American history, again, understanding why we are how we are, who we are, and how we got here today. And so I tend to point to a lot of that stuff in my music, even if it's cryptic, it's there.
I appreciate that and admire that because a good friend of mine once said, if you're going to say something musically, have something to say.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's where you're coming from too.
Yeah. Oops, that's accidental.
Oh, that's dope. Let's talk about the name Q, aka Media Pimp.
Yep.
What's the story behind that?
It's actually boring. So, I mean, my name is Quentin, and most people call me Q. I started a solo freelance business. I was stepping away from having partners and all that stuff. For whatever reason, I decided to go with Media Pimp Studios. But I was also, selling my services. So it seemed appropriate, Media Pimp. I was doing, graphic design, web design. I was doing photography. I was doing some light video stuff. So it seemed appropriate to say Media Pimp Studio.
Yeah.
And so years later, when I was trying to think of what I would call myself, because there's like Q was such a generic name. There's a bunch of us out there. So I was like, where else do I go with it? And so, AKA Media Pimp came in.
Yeah. Even that tells a story, I think. Going back to what you mentioned about your whole approach to everything from coding to lyricism to engineering.
Yeah. So I'm still doing all the things, and it seemed appropriate. So.
Right.
Yeah.
You had mentioned something before about your interests on a socio-political spectrum, and then how that bleeds into what you do as an artist and lyricist. It seems to me, I'm no expert, and this is probably super reductive, but like if we're an artist, it's almost a responsibility to comment in a substantive way on what we see and what we experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so for instance, going back even to medieval times, right? It was the court jester who could offer a critique of the ruling class.
Right.
They had like that bubble of artistic expression.
Yeah.
What do you think the connection is, or how do you feel about that with an artist, and whether or not that is an obligation or is it a burden? What do you think about it?
So I feel like art has always been one of the primary ways to express not only yourself but what you see, and speak for those who don't know how to put those things into words. And hip hop largely has a history in that form of expression. If you think about some of the older songs, like talking about what was going on in their neighborhoods. Even NWA, as crass as they were telling you what they were experiencing, what people around them were going through. And so I feel like it's extremely important, especially in the world of hip hop, to not just brag about stuff that you do or don't have, but to actually point to the social issues that, the things that are affecting, if they aren't affecting you, they're affecting someone that you know. And people listen to what we have to say. So it's important for us to have something to say. That's just my personal opinion. And I lean heavily into it.
Well, if we're gonna stand, we might as well stand on business.
Yeah, exactly. So if I'm critical of you in a song, I will be critical to you to your face.
Yeah. Well, that's only fair. I mean, yeah. Otherwise, at least for me personally, it would be cowardly.
Right. Yeah. It's more than just music for me. This is my life. This is our lives.
Yeah. I think that's really profound, and I agree with it. It makes me think of something. So, at least with you, I feel it's the same way with me. If I see something, if I'm feeling something, then I have to express it in my creative output. So then it's the art is really connected to the artist. Now, of course, that's that huge debate that I don't think will ever be resolved. How closely should we link the art with the artist across all spectrums? Because you have some artists that have been alleged to do terrible things, but the art is speaking some amazing things.
Right.
So what's your feelings on that? What are your thoughts regarding art, artist, connection, separation?
Yeah, I personally do not separate the art from the artist. I have stopped listening to specific artists because of their ways of being. I don't watch films with certain actors in them. I am very much always me. And again, if someone were to catch me in something, I would expect to be called out for it, and stand on it. So I do that. I live that way, and I do not. I refuse to separate the art from the artist. And I can't speak for anybody else. That's just my own personal way of being, and I don't fault anyone who does otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. There's a lot to be said for being a human of principle.
Yeah, definitely.
Mark of trustworthiness, I think. But, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
to each his own, you know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
all good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You had mentioned earlier the collective Gryskll.
Me joining was 2022, and by I want to say May or so, I had put out my first song with him.
Yeah. That was a pretty quick turnaround, actually.
Yeah, and all with me saying I'm not getting back into music the entire time.
Yeah, you were dragged kicking and screaming.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
What's the chemistry like? Because Gryskll has people from everywhere.
Yeah.
And all different, I would say, kind of disciplines creatively.
When I first started meeting with people, it was during what we call gray space, which was largely for a group of anyone who was interested, not just members of Gryskll, but anyone interested to basically log on, and if they had something on their mind or they wanted to get off their chest or whatever, it was just a space to come and communicate, have people to talk to, people to listen. And so that became something that I frequented, and then eventually became kind of the one spearheading it. And so that was always a good way for us to kind of get to know each other and really be vulnerable. And I think that helped us really get to know each other really well. So we've come to a point where we're basically like brothers, and just from distances. But we all know each other really well, even though most of us have never seen each other in person.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. We have really, I want to say we have really great chemistry and respect for each other. So we can critique without having ego attached to it, without judgment, so it's just organically great.
Yeah. I could feel how good you feel about it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's exciting to find community.
Yeah.
Even if it's not like-minded people, but if there's a level of respect. I
Yeah.
think sometimes a difference in
Yeah.
perspective helps it grow. Like we
Yeah.
need a little bit of friction to grow.
Yeah. And we're all pretty different. Like some of us are, rough around the edges. But like we all still have this great respect for each other, and we work really well together. So it creates for some really interesting music as well, which I really love, because it's never what you expect it to be by the time it's done.
It makes me think of how important it is to have an outside voice.
Yeah.
You're creating.
Yeah.
Sometimes when an artist is just a singular organism, then they might even be prolific and excellent.
Mm-hmm.
But without that outside voice, things could get a little stale.
Yeah. That's it's funny because I'm actually I consider myself a lone wolf. Like I work primarily in a vacuum when I can. Like it's just me in this space here, and I create something personally that I think is just for me. People seem to like it, but I'm creating literally just for me. Like I don't care about any other MCs. I don't care about anyone else's tastes. For me, it's whether or not I like it at the end of the day, because I'm going to be the one listening to it. Other people might hear it because I'm putting it out, but I don't care if they like it or not. But when it comes to us working together, it's a totally different creative space, and there is that teamwork that makes the final thing happen. That makes it great. So yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that.
It's I get to live in multiple worlds, which is really great.
Yeah, I think it is. We polish up this side of ourselves and then that other side of ourselves, and it
Yeah,
contributes to the whole.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Let's talk briefly about the variation series.
yes.
So, I was crazy stoked when you wanted to tackle one of the variations for our song "Pulling Me." What was that process like for you?
So it's funny when you first mentioned it, and I was like, I'm gonna throw my hat in, and I kept saying to myself, I hope it's pushing me. I don't know why. With like the moment I heard that song, I was like, this has to be the one, and it was also partially I knew it was gonna force me outside of my comfort zone because I tend to focus primarily on hip hop. In the past, I've made some Baltimore club music and I've made some house music as well, but they were just kind of things that I just played around with. But with this, it was something that was so far outside of my comfort zone that I just wanted to see what I could do with it. Also happened to be at a particularly busy and tough time. I'd been dealing with some close friends' deaths, and I was really busy as well, and dealing with a depressive episode. So it made it difficult, but it also forced me to push even harder to do something. So some of the communications that we had, it was like, I don't know about this, but and it was funny because I didn't really know exactly where I wanted to go. I had 4 different ideas and I stuck with 2. And you can hear them in my version. Initially, I was going with the R&B take. I was like, I'm going to turn this into a old school or classic R&B type, 90s R&B type song. And then once I started kind of pushing and pulling on the on getting things like where I needed them to drop on the rhythm, I at some point decided that I wanted to make it a dance track. I don't really know why. I think I was kind of down, and the best way to pick myself up was to do something that was a little more up tempo. And I think that once I started with that, like I started with the drums, and I was like, all right, this sounds like it could be something. And so I just kept plugging along with that. And it wasn't until later that I decided that I was going to keep a portion of what I had done for the R&B version. And so you'll hear that early on in that little breakdown. That was where I was initially going with it. It kind of broke up some of the tedium. And I like to do things like that from time to time.
Yeah.
So it was really it was mostly having fun and trying to also pick up my own mood. So it was helpful in me doing that. And I just really love the song. So I wanted to do justice to it as much as possible.
Man, well, I appreciate it. I think you more than did justice to it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it has a feeling of you really approaching it with a sense of attention to detail and care. Like I remember you and I we were talking about the snare sound.
Yeah.
That's not a stock
No.
snare. Like
No.
you did a bunch of stuff to that thing, right?
Yeah. It's all my hands.
That is so cool.
Me snapping, clapping. Yeah, it's a bunch of, and I think I even tapped the desk and recorded that. Like it's just a few sounds that I crunched together to make that snare sound.
I think that's out of this world.
Thank you.
But it just has a texture to it. If that organic, alive feeling. Obviously, we're fans of that. But the way you were able to incorporate that was really, really smart. I think it's successful, 100%.
Thank you.
It has a nice bounce, a groove. It's really the only one of the only ones that we received that really plays off of our initial vision for the song, which was, man, we've never done something that has a house feel. Let's do something like that. So it's so interesting how diverging paths could meet in a way like that. So
And
we're all really excited to hear
it's
that.
possible that I picked up on those vibes. So
Yeah, look at that.
yeah.
That's what's up. So, what do you have coming on the horizon for people to look out for?
Solo wise, I've been working on an EP, and I guess I was holding off on actually announcing anything until I actually finish it because I'm using other people as excuses right now. Yeah, I'm putting out a 6 song, five and a half song EP called Not Checkers. Um,
Oh,
Working
yeah.
on that. It's produced by one of the Gryskll members, one of our primary producers. His name is Bobby Fisher. And
Oh,
so you'll understand why I call it Not Checkers, because his name is Bobby Fisher.
yeah.
And the way that I construct music, I tend to think of myself as a chess player. It's one of those like, oh, he's
Yeah.
he's playing something different here, and it's all very personal for me.
Mm.
I'm approaching 50, so you know, I, and whenever people say this is a young man's game, or they have an idea of what someone my age can do as a lyricist, so I want to kind of turn that on its head. And I'm not saying that I'm the only person out there doing that. It's just, I'm a nobody from Maryland. You know what I mean? And so I'm trying to show that there are people in this age group that are not known, that are working at a high level, and that can do things lyrically and production wise. Like all of us we call ourselves Gryskll, and there's a reason for it. All of us have grays. Oh,
Well, I don't see anything wrong with that.
right.
That is super exciting.
Yes.
Super exciting. Where can people find you online?
Me personally, you can go to mediapimp.studio, and for the crew, just go to gryskll.com, or gryskll.bandcamp.com.
And
And
that's
right.
Gryskll, right?
Yep. Thank you. Yeah.
Man, Q, it has been an absolute pleasure chopping it up with you, man. Thank you for the awesome conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you also for your fantastic work in general.
Thank you.
I'm glad you came back to the game. I think you're a voice that, and a brain and a soul that needs to be heard and
Thank
felt
you.
and experienced. So,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity.
oh man, that really is my pleasure, man. So you hold it down, tell the fellas we said what's up.
Do. All right.
Yep. And we'll holler at you soon.
All right, man.
Peace.